Welcome to The Grind. Before we get this episode started, if you could please take a minute to share us on whatever platform you're watching or listening on, we would greatly appreciate it. A share on Facebook, a retweet on Twitter, and a subscribe on YouTube would go a long way in extending our reach and engaging more App State wrestling fans. Thank you for your time. Here's your host, Dominic Parisi.
Thank you, JB. So tonight we have a very special guest for you all, and I know we say that every episode, but we really have a special guest. Before I introduce him, I'm going to tell you about his career. He wrestled for App. Listen to this. Wrestled for App from 1949 to 1951 and was a member of the undefeated 1950 team that went 13-0 while setting a national scoring record with 368 points. He had a 32-3 overall record while wrestling at App. He also competed in the Olympic trials in Ames, Iowa in 1952 and was inducted into the Appalachian State University Athletics Hall of Fame in 1997. More recently, he has become a vital part of App State Wrestling's success through financial contributions. His gracious donations have completed facility upgrades in both the wrestling and locker rooms. But most importantly, his donations have provided scholarship opportunities for both current and future App State wrestlers. His support has helped App become a top 25 Division I ranked wrestling program over the past 3 to 5 years. Help me welcome to Beyond the Mat with Wayne C. York, also known as Papa Wayne. Papa Wayne, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Well, I tell you what, we can't be more excited to have you on the show tonight, to have someone with your history of this program that literally not many people know at all is just awesome. So we can't thank you enough for joining us. We really appreciate you spending your time to be here. And yeah, let's get right into it, Wayne. How did you get started in the sport of wrestling?
Well, during the war, they dropped all the sports except football, basketball, and baseball. But I went out for every team there was when they started back. I was on what they call the 30-30 teams. If our team was 30 points ahead, 30 points behind, 30 seconds left in the game, then they put me in.
So sounds like you were the guy. And what?
Yeah.
Well, that was World War II, correct?
That's right.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. So then let's backtrack before your career here at App. We'll get into that here shortly. Tell us about your high school career. What was that like? Talk to us about your wrestling career in high school.
Well, it was very short because they had dropped wrestling and didn't start back until the war was over. So I wrestled for the YMCA, and that was the only experience I had in wrestling. But there was only they had a state tournament. There was only 3 teams in the state, and one of them didn't show up.
Oh,
so I won by beating a guy from Greensboro. And at that time, if you got a pin in the second period in a minute and a half, you had to wrestle a third period of a minute and a half, give him a chance to pin you in less time. So I pinned him again. And I won the state championship by winning 1 match.
You're kidding me. I'll be honest with you. I had no idea of that. So back when in high school, back in the 1940s, you're telling me that if you pinned somebody, they had redemption to try and pin you back in order to win the match.
If you pin them in the first period, it was over. But if you pin him in the second period in 2 minutes, you had to wrestle another 2 minutes to give him a chance to pin you in less time. It's a weird rule, but that's the way it was.
Wow. So not even you're giving us history about the sport of wrestling, not just Appalachian. Wow, that's something I really didn't know. So now high school's over. Before you attended App State, it says you attended for 3 years. Where'd you go to college before Appalachian?
I went 1 year to High Point College. At the time, it's High Point University now. I lived in High Point and I was a day student for 1 year. Then I got a scholarship to go to Appalachian for the next 3 years.
Awesome. How did High Point have did they have wrestling, or were you just there just pretty much for education?
Well, the YMCA had a team, but the high school didn't start until after the war.
Right. Who helped you get a scholarship from High Point to Appalachian? Was there anybody that kind of you were talking with that told you, hey, forget about High Point, come wrestle for us here at App?
Yeah. Well, a guy named Charlie Parks, he was a national AAU champion, and he introduced me into the sport.
Awesome. Yeah. We do know Charlie Parks. He's one of the another wrestler another wrestler like you with some great accolades and wrestling back in the same time you did. So your sophomore year was your first year at App.
That's right.
What was the university like back then? Right now we've got 20,000 plus students currently attending App State. What was it like back in 1949? Give us some insight on that.
Well, it was very different. It was only 800 students plus me. And so you had to, the women had to get permission from home to ride in cars even. And so you had to walk everywhere you went. And it was very strict.
Well, so the enrollment was 800. The women had to get permission to drive in vehicles. That's unbelievable. What was
earlier than that? They had separate dining facilities and dormitories and all that. So, come a long way since then.
Yeah, they have, man. They didn't want them hanging out with the guys at all. What was tuition like? What was the tuition there? Do you remember what tuition?
Yeah, it was $45 a semester for your basic tuition plus your books and room and board. $45.
$45 for tuition.
Quarter.
My goodness. What did you have any kind of job when you were at App, or was wrestling your job?
Yeah, Coach Red Watkins was a deacon in the Presbyterian Church. He got me a job for $10 a week for sweeping out the sanctuary and the classrooms with a broom. Vacuum cleaners were not real popular back then, but.
So you mentioned Watkins. Was that your coach? While you were attending?
Yeah, Red Watkins. He coached for about 20 or 30 years there.
And he was a pretty successful coach. Was he a good coach? Give us some insight on him.
He was a better recruiter than he was a coach. He recruited Emil Tomic. He was national AAU champion as a veteran, and had a son who later became a wrestler. So we had some really outstanding people, and we had a difficult time getting matches. We had to wrestle YMCA teams, military teams, anybody we could get a match with. There was only one other college, Western Carolina had a wrestling program. Other than that, that was it.
Wow. Along with your coach, your teammates, who's the one teammate that sticks out to you today? Who's the guy that you would always battle with in the wrestling room, or who's the guy you would always hang out with the most outside of the room?
Well, M. Atomic, he was a veteran. He was 28 years old, I think, and had a son. And he and I worked out together for 2 years. He graduated a year ahead of me, but I had 2 years of daily wrestling with him, and he was more or less who I developed my talents from.
Right. And again, for those just tuning in, we're talking to Wayne C. York on The Grind tonight. Please feel free to share the video on whatever social media platform that you're watching on. Go ahead and put some comments or questions in the video here. I'll be keeping an eye on that as well, and we'll ask Wayne some questions that you guys might have. But moving on here, describe, let everybody know, Wayne, what kind of wrestler you are. Describe your style, your favorite position, favorite move. Give us some insight on how you beat up on some guys.
Well, I was better on the mat than I was on my feet. But once I got on the mat, I was very aggressive. I used a cross face and used my legs a lot. But I was very aggressive, and I didn't think I won unless I pinned the guy. And then now a touch of both scapula is a fall, but then you had to hold them down for 2 seconds, 2 full seconds. And that's kind of hard to do.
It is.
But I got 13 in a row. One year, I'm not sure which.
Yeah, that's another rule that's drastically different from back in the late 40s and early 50s to now. Is as soon as both those shoulder blades are on the mat, that's a pin.
That's right.
But you're saying you had to hold them down for 2 seconds.
2 full seconds.
Really? Yeah, that's a little different. You got to have some man strength to do that, huh?
One tournament I was in, I was the only person that got a fall. All the other matches were won by points.
Hey, you must have been a brutal wrestler on top then.
Well, I hate to brag about it, but I get better every year.
What was your favorite move on your feet? How'd you get your opponent to the mat? What was your best takedown, I guess?
Well, I wrestled Greco-Roman and freestyle, and of course Greco-Roman was after. I mean, you had to use only upper body, but I was not really good on my feet, but I was very good on the mat. And I attack from the left side. Most people, the right side.
Right.
I go for a cross face, and if they resisted, I'd throw them back on their back.
And for those that don't know, a cross face is basically it's a move you can do in wrestling. That's I guess you can say it's a legal punch to the face in the sport of wrestling, while they're on the mat and you're working on top trying to pin them. What's your most memorable duel, your most memorable team duel while wrestling at App? Who did you compete against? Who was a tough opponent that App State took down?
Auburn they were perennial Southeastern Conference champions, and also Washington Lee was the Southern Conference, which is now the Atlantic Coast, but we beat both of those teams. We beat Auburn 29-5, and they were the champions of the Southeastern Conference at the time.
Was that a pretty tough conference, the Southeastern Conference?
Yeah, but not as much as the colleges up north, because there's a lot more wrestling in the Northeast and Iowa and Oklahoma, places like that.
Yeah. And it's crazy you say that. I mean, Again, as you, I'm an App State wrestling alum, and I mean, hearing that Auburn had a wrestling program is crazy. I mean, none of the schools in the SEC even have wrestling anymore. So that's pretty wild that you were wrestling against them when they had wrestling programs. Okay, so let's move on here. What's your fondest memory? What's your favorite part about Boone? So kind of outside of the sport of wrestling, what sticks out when you were up here in Boone? What did you enjoy most about this town?
Well, it was a small enrollment, and everybody knew everybody else, and you could walk to the town, which was small, and I liked that part about it. That was probably the best part for me.
Nice small town feel.
Oh yeah.
It still has that small town feel, kinda. Just has 20,000 students now. Again, we're talking with Wayne C. York. If you're just tuning in, also known as Papa Wayne, feel free to share this video on any social media that you're on. Also, put any questions that you would like to know in the chat, and we'll possibly get to them. So what did you do for fun in Boone? Wasn't Boone a dry town when you were in school? What did you guys do for fun?
Well, we had dates, and we'd sit in the lobby and hold hands and kiss and stuff like that.
Did the women have to get permission?
We'd go on hikes to Winkler's Creek and that sort of thing.
Really? Was there trails down Winkler Creek at that time, or?
Well, a pretty well beaten path of the kids going down there.
Yeah. Did the women have to get permission slips to go on dates as well as they did driving in cars, or?
They couldn't even get in the car and ride without a letter from home.
Oh, that's crazy. That is crazy. So your senior year at App, what did they have any superlatives or anything that students would vote on? Specifically for you, I think I remember seeing that you were voted best looking in your senior class. Is that correct?
Yeah, I won by one vote, and I cast that vote.
So you're out of 800 students, your vote was the one that put you over top, being best looking in your senior class, huh?
I'm sure all the other contestants voted for themselves too.
Yeah. Oh, they
Don't
did.
feel too bad about it.
They did. Oh. So let's get on to your career after wrestling. So you graduated from App in 1951. What did you do next after you graduated from App State?
I enlisted in the Air Force. No, I went to graduate school. Yeah. Went to graduate school at the University of Tennessee and got a master's degree in physical education. I majored in general science and PE. You had to have a double major undergraduate. So
you went on to graduate school at the University of Tennessee.
Right.
Awesome. How was that? University of Tennessee, that's a little bit bigger university than App, which was actually we didn't even mention this. App was a teacher's college when you were in school. But how was that transition going from a smaller school to the University of Tennessee? What was that like?
It wasn't too much difference. You had different schools, and engineering was one school, and every other thing like a big university. So it still had a small feeling. You got to know people.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and that wasn't not too far from Boone, probably about what? I'd say 4 or 5 hours down the road, heading into Tennessee.
Yeah, 3 hours.
So when you graduated from the University of Tennessee, What did you do for work? What was your professional career that you went into after you graduated from grad school?
I went into YMCA work. I kind of grew up in the Y during my youth, learned to swim, and camp counselor, and all kinds of things. But with the Y, it led me down that path.
And so how many years do you think you've worked with the YMCA from when you graduated graduate school till you retired? How many years did you work for the Y?
Worked for 38 years. I had
Wow.
5 different YMCA's in Knoxville, Fort Lauderdale, Jacksonville, Burlington, North Carolina, and Stuart, Florida. Those were 5 YMCA's I worked for.
So you were all over the southeast region of the U.S. What year did you retire from working with the YMCA?
1992.
Wow.
Clipping coupons ever since.
Clipping coupons ever since. Love it. Again, those tuning in, this is Wayne C. York, wrestling alum from 1949 up into the early 50s. If you've got any questions, feel free to comment. Give us a question here in the feed, and we'll try to get to it. Share the video as well. We'll go ahead and move on, Wayne, to some of our last questions that we have for this episode. What is one thing that you hope people will remember you for as an App State wrestling alum? What's one message you want people to know about you, Wayne?
I want them to know that I appreciate the scholarship that I had, and I'm very happy to be able to return that favor by donating to help other people in my situation to have the same type of experience.
Yeah, and you know, we can't be more grateful for all the support that you have given this wrestling program over the past 4 or 5 years. You know, I was a student athlete as well who was on a scholarship, and you know, you don't really realize the impact that a scholarship has until you are graduated and start working, and then start realizing everything that the university and this sport does for you. So, you know, the impact that you're making, Wayne, is beyond grateful, and it is huge to this current and future wrestlers that we have. Lastly, is there anything else that you would want to say? Anything that have you been to any of the wrestling matches? Have you seen any matches in Varsity Gym with the current atmosphere that we have when wrestling bigger schools, Power 5 schools? Have you been to any of those matches?
Yes, Clint and I came up to some matches up there and thoroughly enjoyed it, and appreciate the warm welcome that we received.
Yeah, and Clint is your son, correct?
Right.
Awesome.
He played football at Elon, and they won 2 national championships while he was there, but he didn't do much in the wrestling.
Wasn't a wrestler?
No, he was a football player.
Football players are tough too, though, right? They're tough too.
Oh,
you can't hate on football players. Although I would say a wrestler turned football player, or a football player who wrestled, would be a pretty darn good football player, in my opinion.
Yeah, they complement each other very much.
Yeah.
Especially linemen. Balance is so important. If you don't have good balance, you get pinned a lot.
Yep.
And so that is a very big factor.
Yeah, definitely. Did you ever try to get Clint into the sport of wrestling?
Well, I encouraged him to get into everything, and he did participate in swim teams and YMCA basketball leagues and all kinds of things like that. So he was into sports, still is.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, yeah, I've had the pleasure to meet both you and your son Clint multiple times, and we always go to Mellow Mushroom after some wrestling matches up here. Get us some pizza, a couple drinks. So always a pleasure to have you guys in town. That is pretty much going to wrap up the episode for Beyond the Mat tonight. Um, just so everybody knows, please become a Patreon of the Grind. The site to become a Patreon is live and is posted, will be posted in the Facebook chat to this video. These live streams will eventually be exclusive for our Patreons only, along with some other content. That being said, we would like to thank Jesse for becoming the first Patreon of the Grind. So we would really like to thank you, Jesse, for your support. We really do appreciate it. That being said, go ahead and follow us on all our major social media networks at App State Grind. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Please share our content. Help us get the word out about what we're doing, trying to spread the history of App State wrestling. And again, speaking of history, we can't thank you, Wayne, enough for being on tonight. We appreciate you giving up your time to give us some insight on what it was like back here in the late 1940s and early 50s, and also your life after wrestling at App. We can't thank you enough. That's all we have. We appreciate you tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you next Monday for another episode of Beyond the Mat. Take care.
This episode of The Grind is proudly sponsored by Mountaineer Works. Mountaineer Works, owned and operated by Appalachian State alum and athletics photographer Chad W. Mitchell. Chad designs and builds officially licensed, unique cornhole board sets, and today I give my all plaques that will surely rock your tailgate, party, backyard barbecue, office, or creative space. They're sculptured smooth in the wood lab, fire coated at over 3,000 degrees, and paint dyed in the Cornhole Conservatory to complement their one-of-a-kind grain, then App State branded. The best part is you choose from a set of pre-approved color layouts and App State logos to personally design your cornhole boards, and today I give my all plaque. Mix it up or match it up, you can't go wrong. Show your Mountaineer pride as these make solid gifts for deserving folks. Find Mountaineer Works on Facebook and Instagram to place your order or ask a question.
This has been a production by Yosef Media.